Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at the Port Charlotte 18-year-old Dustin.
About time, Mike.
54.3% ABV. 543. They make it easy for us.
There you go.
Like the Bowmer's Devil's Cast. 567. This is just going the other way. 543. But Dustin, Port Charlotte, peated whiskey, peated Bruichladdich, right? Mm-hmm. No, I'm kidding. This particular whiskey, aged 18 years old, heavily peated, and comes in at what we believe is cask strength. A newer release, Dustin, along with the Bruichladdich 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And a couple of people were inquiring if we were going to try to pick these up, and we did.
The answer is we got one of the two.
We got one of the two. I'll try to find the other one. I pick up some.
I'm not a big enough Bruichladdich fan to rush out because I think I paid a small markup over retail on this. I would not do that on Bruichladdich. That's kind of my issue.
It's not as fun because it's not peated. So I was just joking earlier. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the distillery, I also make the unpeated Bruichladdich, like the classic Laddie or the Black Art. And then they have a peated line, these Port Charlottes, and they also have their ultra peated line,
the Octomores.
So fun whiskeys. We're always a huge fan of pretty much all the Islay distilleries, and this is no exception, Dustin.
Fortunately, guys, bad news: 6,000 bottles. That's actually part of why I rushed out to grab it. I was hoping this would be something that would show up here in the States, but I saw 6,000. I was like, ew. So it's 74% refill sherry, Mike, and 26% is it's a refilled French oak wine cask. They did not say what kind of wine. I'm guessing those of you who know what they're sourcing might know better than we would. I went to their website. They disclose everything about their whiskeys except that. I was kind of surprised.
Let's see if we can figure it out first, Dustin.
We are not the people to figure out what kind of wine cask finish somebody used.
Someone again suggested maybe getting some wines just to kind of taste what their Fino sherry. I think it was basically based off the Apollo Cordado that we did, and I was just like, yeah, we've tried wines, we've tried sherry before.
Yeah, I mean, we have had. I know we joke about it. We've had Fino, we've had PX, we've had Oloroso. Maybe not Apollo Cortado, maybe not a couple of these other ones, but we have tried a decent bit of this stuff. It's just not our wheelhouse, and not something we enjoy enough to really spend the money on.
Too thin. All right, Dustin. Let's get to this Port Charlotte 18-year-old. I got to tell you, man, when I see any Isla that's 17, 18 years old, I'm usually cask strength, peated whiskey.
Yeah.
I'm usually excited about the experience.
Super excited. And, Mike, the nose on this one is exactly what you're expecting when you hear refilled wine and sherry casks. It is gasoline meets Fruity Pebbles.
Marshmallow Fruity Pebbles, if you will. Blue box. But yes, very, very sweet and meaty at the same time.
Yes, you're right. Now, the meats are there, too. There's a salinity here.
Yeah. Oh, man, I tell you what. Okay, so yeah, let's get into flavors. I mean, Dustin, I love the Bruichladdich peat. I've often said it's not quite the cooling peat that Ardbeg is, but there is a similarity to it. There is some sort of coolish-esque style to this peat, along with just some beautiful dry fruits from the sherry.
I mean, if you kind of think of the temperature feel, Ardbeg does this, whereas Port Charlotte does this. It's just a little subtle kiss of coolness. Yeah. It's also just a cleaner peat, I think, than anybody else's.
Smoke.
They don't really play. Their peat doesn't really play on fruitness notes, whereas Lafroig and Ardbeg do. I don't really get a lot of fruit in Lagavulin, maybe some lemon, but it's less fruity than those two. This is the least fruity. So when they use wine cask, they really add that fruit note, and they're doing a great job here.
Yeah, fruitiness with some of the Port Charlottes is almost non-existent without some wine cask to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but beautiful sweetness, a nice candied vanilla, along with that vanilla / milk chocolate sort of note going back and forth with that little bit of that twinge of white smoked peat is just beautiful.
Yeah, a little hint of pepper.
A small bit of pine, kind of dead pine leaves maybe.
Smoked pork belly for sure coming through here.
Maple glazed bacon. Went to a steakhouse not long ago. It was a pretty nice steakhouse, my wife and I. And for the appetizers, they had the big thick cuts of bacon.
Yeah.
And you think it's going to be super salty, and it's just a maple glaze over top of it, and they just take the salt right out of it, but the meatiness is still there.
Oh, yeah. This is nice. I love that initial, cooling gasoline kind of thing that's coming in with those fruity notes. It just stays there. It's funky. It's dirty up front. That's all the wine cask giving that, because again, Port Charlotte is such a clean peat.
Couple of red fruits popping up here, Dustin. A little bit of no tart strawberry here.
There's definitely a little bit of tardiness going on here.
How about the strawberry? But you're right, there is another note that's slightly tardy, but it's not just...
It's not the strawberry, no, you're right.
It's not the red fruit note. Industrial coal. I said white smoke before, but now I'm kind of getting an industrial coal note, or a coal note before you set it on fire. Charcoal
I
note,
can't even argue for wood smoke too, coming through both of them.
Yeah, there is multiple layers to the smoke note to this, because there's definitely cask maturation smoke, from the oak here, and then of course it's a peated whiskey. 18 years old is usually a nice in-between ground with peated whiskeys, of where it starts to sashay into the better smoke notes. It starts to dissipate, so you get a little bit of the cask and the peat from the distillates turned down just enough where you can experience both of them. Lovely.
Yeah, 18 is it's a kind of a sweet spot in the peat world, where you get that combination of youth and strength. When you've got a mass-produced 18-year-old, it's a little bit harder to get a good quality overall, effect. You sort of start getting a little generic, and it starts leaning towards the 10-year notes. Whereas when you have a 6,000, bottle batch, they're able to be much more selective and really kind of pick out the ones that really are starting to give it that old age, while still some with the youthfulness. And this is a masterful job of blending. Call it vatting if you want, but it's blending in reality. Correct. Of casks that were coming off youthful and casks that had really reached a nice mature point. And you can tell they've done a great job.
It wouldn't shock me if some of these are 20, 21-year-old whiskeys in here.
It wouldn't shock me if there's older stuff, or if they just have casks that went further, Yeah,
beautiful smoke note. I have always really appreciated the smoke note on Port Charlotte's. They weren't the exact same, but they were very similar to the Octomores as far as a good, rich smoke note to it.
Yeah. I guess the good and bad I will give guys here on the nose here, and I can already just tell it's going to carry through.
A little bit of hay.
This is not an 18-year version of the Port Charlotte 10 at all. Because of the wine cask, this is a completely different animal. So if you were hoping to get what you love about Port Charlotte 10 just with 8 more years, absolutely not what you're getting here. Completely different animal. Yes, it's more mature Port Charlotte, but these casks are doing a lot.
Yeah, this is almost a lesser version of two specialty bottlings, the OLC and the PMC. So there are a few of the red fruits that are in the PMC, and there are a few of the darker sherry notes that are in the OLC in this particular one.
Agreed.
But just both of those are slightly turned down, or you could just say more aged. So they're a little bit more integrated into the experience itself. Yeah, but overall, this is a really nice whiskey.
This is a much more sophisticated whiskey than those. Those are much more punchy.
No, those are younger, puncher, 8-9-year-old whiskeys. This is twice as old, but you get components of those two whiskeys, Dustin, inside of both of them. And this is another scenario where I think the normal 10 being at 50% is plenty. But this little bit extra is so worth it. I know it's only 4 or 5%, difference, but I would imagine these things are coming in at the 10-year-old, probably 60% ABV normally, so then you go down to 50. It's, fairly significant.
Oh, man.
Give it to me, Dustin. What you got?
Palate it's 18-year-old whiskey all the way through. It is the proof, you honestly would think this is 100 proof in terms of the alcohol. It's just, there's no alcohol here. It's incredible how well they did that. Initially, the arrival is kind of peppery, a little bit vegetal, but yet clean smoke all the way through. And then it starts turning a little bit to like a sour milk note with some vanilla coming through. And that sort of turns into like a toasty, tannic oak as it kind of transitions into the finish. And then the smoke level starts picking up. Heavy wood smoke, way less of the charcoal. Again, went very clean. The red wine cask play a little bit of a role up front on the sweetness. And then they kind of, leave you for like this kind of like vanilla toasted oak kind of a transition, and then they kind of come back giving you a nice, again, light fruit, and they just give it a nice funkiness. Really well done.
First comes off very, very palatable. Nice, warm arrival. Really can't pick up anything as far as an alcohol bite. Get a little bit of whiff of smoke. When you swallow, Dustin, for just a moment, it gets so dirty and sooty. Right when you initially swallow. Dirt, soot, comes back up. A little bit of at first I thought it was salt, but it's almost like more of a pepper note. But there is some salinity to that pepper note. Beautiful smoke. The wine casks on the finish do a nice job of settling in on the sides of the palate, give you a nice little milk chocolate along with that industrial coal smoke note. Wow. You said initially I'm getting 18-plus-year-old whiskey there, and I completely agree with that. That is silky. That is well refined. Doesn't come off cask strength or super high ABV as far as any type of sting, but still the viscosity is right there. Good viscosity, not great viscosity, but good viscosity. I love how quickly dirty that note came as soon as we swallowed as far as the smoke note. Now just a few red fruits. And there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, so again, I think good point you made on the when you swallow. What really happens when you swallow is the wine casks come back out. They kind of fade away while you're kind of
at first,
moving it around your palate. You're actually getting more of like Port Charlotte 10 in a lot of ways, only a more sophisticated version with the bourbon cask, with vanilla
right,
toast.
Yeah.
And again, all that is just straight, it's wood smoke. Then you get that coal smoke like you were talking about when you swallow, and those wine casks come in and they really come in assertive, aggressive. But because this isn't first fill, it's not over the top wine. It's just that the casks are adding a new element there that really honestly benefits us a lot.
It goes from lighter flavors, vanilla, white smoke, and then it gets dirty, and then finishes with like red fruits, chocolate. I mean, which that transition is pretty substantial. Even though we're not, I don't feel like I'm giving that enough of emphasis as far as how drastic of a change.
It's a solid punch, man. I mean, it hits.
I mean, but go from like that vanilla and pretty clean experience to instantly swallowing and then just getting dirt, red fruits, smoke, milk chocolate. It was a nice turn. I guess what you're saying is, you know what? I'm just going to agree with something you said earlier, Dustin. It comes off very Port Charlotte initially, and then as soon as it starts to go down the back of your tongue and into your throat, it gets super dirty and give you a completely different experience, and the casks really take over.
Yeah, beautiful transitions, complexity, depth, and by the way, water just brought out raspberry like crazy on the nose here.
Raspberry, that's probably right. I wanted to say earlier like crab apple or something like that, but it was not nearly that tart. It was like a lot more inviting of a red fruit than that. But raspberries probably.
Well, you brought up strawberries earlier, and I agreed. Now with water, that raspberry, like the tartness got up a little bit.
A little bit of raspberry on top of your creme brulee, Dustin. A little bit of leaf mint right next to it.
God, that is nice. And the smoke is getting more distinct too. Beautiful. Oh, I missed this note earlier, but a little bit of cheesecake.
Okay.
Like a little bit of raspberry cheesecake. Like you put the raspberry on top of like a cheesecake. It's definitely.
That's some of the notes you get initially when you taste it. Again, some of those lighter notes initially to get there, they have their moments, but then they quickly get enveloped by the cask maturation of this one. You gotta have to dig deep for the sharper vanilla notes, the lighter whipped notes, but they are there as well.
Yeah, so there's a nice oak presence here, especially now that I put water in there. The oak's pretty firm, but yeah, underneath that oak is a little bit of that cheesecake, and it's a really nice note that I picked up when I first had this, and I'm picking it up now again. I kind of missed that note initially.
Okay, I'm going to say something. It almost comes off a little bit Lagavulin vegetal note, kind of, here at the end. That could sashay into, besides the vegetal note, there's almost kind of like a weird milk note to it as well, sort of in the background.
I mentioned both of those when I first got in there, yeah. There's a little bit of like, almost like a slightly soured milk. Not in an offensive way, but just a slightly soured milk note comes in there. And then it sashays to just kind of a nice, like a milk stout where they've added lactose to really kind of give it that nice, smooth, like central, like flavor.
Well, see, if you ever get Cheesecake Factory cheesecake, they put sour cream on the top, like as a whipped topping. It looks like whipped cream, but it's actually sour cream on top. It's almost like a twinge of sour cream on top of that cheesecake. But again, that isn't offensive. That's kind of like that milky sort of.
Maybe that's why I don't like Cheesecake Factory.
Every person I say that to, like, oh, really? I haven't had it that way. I'm like, yeah, you have. Like, I've been with you when you had it. Not you necessarily, but you say it, but it doesn't come off that way. It comes off more of a sweet, candied experience rather than what you would think sour cream would taste
when you
like.
mix it with, cheesecake. I mean, I'm sure it does.
And a ton of sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
You can make anything.
But my first thought was like, I've never been a huge Cheesecake Factory cheesecake fan. I wonder if that's part of the reason.
Buddy, let me tell you, this is America. You can put enough sugar into anything to change the taste of it to sweet.
I'm really enjoying this, Mike. Oh,
me too. It's a good one, man. I know one of our subscribers, was just, asked if we were going to get these ones, and as soon as he said it, I was like, that sounds delicious. And as soon as I saw something come on the website, I was like, Dustin, look at what we have here.
And I was like, I can't do that. Click, bye.
20 minutes later, you sent me a text with a picture of shipping details. All right, Dustin. Thoughts on this one? Whiskey score time. Give it to me.
Yeah. So I'm going to give this 89. I'm between 88 and 89. I really love what it's doing, but it doesn't have any wow factor. It doesn't have anything that like shoots up and like gives me something like incredible. Extremely well done quality whiskey. About $240. I think pricing is reasonable. That's what I paid. I think retail was slightly less than that, but I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, for ABV and age, it's definitely worth that price, I would say. I am exactly where you're at. I was going back and forth between 89 and a 90. I think, because you opened this up recently, you guys can't tell, but it's about down here. But we haven't had this bottle open in a long time.
No, it definitely is going to change.
I bet this bottle will be a 90, 90, maybe even a 91 in 6 months. That's my guess.
We'll definitely, if it starts drinking really well and I don't just kill it, we'll bring it back.
Yeah, no, this has so many flavors to it, Dustin.
Well, we got to do a versus with this. So, guys, think of what we can compare this with. That way we can bring it back. We'll have a good video to do. I don't know if you want to see, like, the MC1 against it.
Or 10-year-old.
Yeah, or the 10, or, maybe you want to compare this to an Octomore. I don't know.
So, this to me, Dustin, with Islay whiskeys, I always hope the difference between, say, the standard 10 and something like an 18-year-old is like the Lafroig difference. Like there's between Lafroig 10 and Lafroig 18, like that monumental jump. This is more like Ardbeg 10 converts Ardbeg 19.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think if we had this next to 10, we'd be able to pick up a lot more age and a lot more cast nuance to this particular one. This is another scenario where I hear Port Charlotte, a distillery, I love, Brooklyn, a distillery I love, the Port Charlotte, the heavily peated way of them making their whiskey, and 18 years old, and cask strength, and a wine cask maturation. My expectation level of this was through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a very good whiskey. But this is just like when someone tells you it's a great movie before you see it.
Yeah.
Your expectation is just so high. I do think this has the potential to be a 90, possibly a 91 whiskey. Right now, today, the amount of time that we've had it, I'm an 89. Right there.
Yeah, it does not jump out over the 10, other than the wine cask notes, as being that much older. Now, that said, we said a lot of stuff that definitely indicates it's older. It's just that unless you're doing it side by side, it's hard. Kind of like you said, Lafroig 18 versus 10. Lafroig 18 just came off way more complex. This, it's definitely older. There's a little more oak. There's a little more presence. The depth is better. But right now, I'm picturing in my head Port Charlotte 10, and it's 85-90% is good.
I agree.
It's probably not compared glass to glass, versus, but
in my enjoyment level, one off. You're right. Do you agree with my assessment of it's very much like Ardbeg 10 compared to Ardbeg 19?
Absolutely, yeah. The only difference is this does have the higher ABV, which I know technically somebody's going to say the 19 is like 46.1 or something. It's 0.1 higher, but
significantly different. Yeah, 50-50.
Yeah, this is a good ABV addition. I think that really helps. So I will say that gives it a little bit more of an oomph, but
basically one had water attitude and one didn't.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
The quality difference here is noticeable and it is palatable and the ABVs are playing a big role. So,
but this also, just along with Ardbeg, goes back to the best 10-year-old in the business might be the Port Charlotte 10 or the Ardbeg 10.
Those are my two favorite 10-year-olds.
Right, sure. Right. I mean, those 10-year-olds.
Those two and then Springbank 10 are like the three that matter. Everything else that's 10 years old and younger, I could do without.
I heard you, Doug.
Maybe a special edition, but otherwise, those three are the ones that matter.
Lafroig 10 cask strength? They've gone down that way. They have.
Anyway, they're fine, but
that's a different conversation.
Yeah, let's not go there.
All right. Anyway, those are our thoughts on this particular Port Charlotte 18. We'll also try to get the Brooklyn 18 for you guys to let you guys know what we think of them. But either one are an easy whiskey to get. We have to order them from overseas retailers.
At some point, they might show up here in the States. We'll see.
Like always, we do the best we can, guys. If you guys had a chance to try this one, only 6,000 bottles, so I know a lot of you aren't going to get a chance to get your hands on it. If you do, I'd like to know what you guys think. Dustin, until next time, what do we wish the folks?
Happy wine cask finished drinking.
We'll see you then.